Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It is Friday, November 15th, and today we're going to take a look at the current astrological transits, get a sense of what's going on and what's coming up. There's a bunch of transits taking place right now that I want to talk about, so no like single focus for today. So I'll go ahead and put up on the screen in the wheel and tell you what we're going to look at. So a couple of transits that are happening at the moment that are of note. One is Mercury retrograde approaching its station while in a trine to retrograding Neptune in Pisces. That's a big deal. We're going to talk about that. The other thing that's happening between today and tomorrow is a grand water trine is forming. I want to spend a little bit more time talking about that today. So that's kind of what's going on. There's some watery stuff going on, right? The other thing that's happening is Mars is culminating in the sign of Libra. A culminating Mars means an explosive Mars. And this is a debilitated Mars as well, but it's a Mars that's about to gain dignity, but it's a Mars that's about to oppose Uranus. Some complicated Mars dynamics going on right now. And remember, Mars, the underlying ruler of the Sun and Mercury. So we need to talk about the fact that Mars is about to go through a big transition. That's coming up. Meanwhile, Venus is just separating from a square to Neptune. That's almost done. Venus is also approaching a conjunction to Neptune. That's a little farther off. I won't talk about that one today, but I might mention it just sort of in a peripheral manner. And also, I mean, who's gonna miss the big one? January 12th, I believe it is. Saturn is approaching conjunction to Pluto. This weekend is going to be a pretty explosive weekend. We have a disseminating trine from the moon to the sun, while also the moon is going to be going through the grand water trine again, but also moving through oppositions to Saturn and Pluto and a square to Mars. So that's a lot. And that'll be mostly happening if we take this forward a little bit, just so you can see how long it's going to take for this to play out. We see the grand water trine coming through like tomorrow afternoon, basically, is when it goes through the trine to Mercury and then picks up the trine to Neptune right away. And then right after that, you're going to see the opposition to Saturn. This is Saturday evening. And then the opposition to Pluto takes place real early morning, Sunday, like 1 a.m. Eastern time. And then going forward, we get the square to Mars on Sunday. And that square to Mars comes in, maybe like mid-afternoon. So, and then finally changes signs into Leo, immediately going into a square with Uranus by Sunday evening. So it gets a rocky weekend for the moon for sure. But it is interesting that it's picking up this grand water trine. So that's just kind of an overview of what's going on. Let's come back to the present moment and let's just talk about each one of these sort of one at a time. So I want to start with just the fact that we have this grand water trine happening while Mercury retrograde is getting ready to station and turn direct in the next week, which means it's going to slow down significantly over the next couple of days in a trine to Neptune. And then I'll work into this, the grand water trine that's coming through tomorrow. So first of all, when Mercury is 10 degrees away from the sun and still retrograde, it means it's just about to appear as the morning star. What's significant about that? When Mercury appears as the morning star, you can expect an email coming into your inbox and saying something that you were not expecting. You can expect an empowered voice to speak to you or to come out of you into the world. You can expect information that has been hidden, unseen, in the process of working itself out to come out and to be revealed. This revealing of Mercury has to do with the fact that Mercury is invisible and is about to appear as a morning star in Mars's sign. What kind of information is this? What kind of communication? What is the wing-footed messenger telling us? Something Mars-like. It's either a conflict that's emotional in nature. It has to do with confronting something, working through something, addressing something head on, directly, right? It can also have something to do with something, again, that's been hidden, that's controversial, or that is more of a Mars-like nature, something unfortunate. This is Mars' general meaning is misfortune, frustration, anger, difficulty, and hardship. Mars ruled things. These kinds of things can come forth suddenly, right? That's the meaning of Mercury. But when it's turning direct, the idea here is that something has the potential to make a turnaround, probably for the better. Like retrograde planet stationing to turn direct is sort of like, someone who's an athlete who's injured themselves, who's able to run again, right? They can run, their ankles better or whatever. So maybe this is a turn for the better, even if it involves some of that explosive Mars energy. Now, I'll get to the Neptune part of this in a second. The other thing that's interesting here is that we take this forward just a few days, and on the same day that Mercury stations direct, Mars gains dignity, leaves its stability, its exile or detriment in Libra, jumps into Scorpio, picks up dignity. So you get a better Mars, a better Mercury on the same day. But this is happening as Mercury is appearing as the morning star. Okay, so that's fantastic. All of that is great. And even if it's difficult, it sort of means that you're going to start, if you've been dealing with some kind of frustration and feeling like you haven't had the will to deal with something, now you will. Or, just you might receive some kind of difficult news, have to clarify yourself, make an executive decision, make a choice, cut or sever ties with someone or something. Or you may get news that's a little bit difficult, but it may be providing a kind of breakthrough. And the reason for the breakthrough is also because as this is happening, Mars is opposing Uranus. So you can see that the opposition to Uranus from Mars is happening at the same time that Mercury is turning direct. So again, this is kind of has the feeling of a turnaround that might be conflicted, might be difficult, some news, some revelation, something coming to you suddenly, but it's also part of this kind of really strong breakthrough moment. Now, as that is all taking place, the other thing that's just fantastic about this is that Mercury is in a trine to Neptune the whole time, and then is by direct motion moving back through that trine. And the actual trine back comes in like the 27th of the month. So you even give 3 degrees afterwards, 18, takes us all the way to the end of November. So this Mercury trine to Neptune is now through the end of the month. So here's the tricky part about this is that Neptune on just like, let's just go kind of the shady dark level of Neptune here. The trine to Neptune is there as a kind of camouflage, right? Smoke and mirrors, deception, illusion, intoxication, poison, not seeing things clearly, fantasies and delusions. It's really interesting to me that with Neptune retrograde and pushing back to Mercury, Mercury's in a close trine, is going to push back to Neptune, that this breakthrough moment may have a cloud of secrecy surrounding it. It feels really cloak and dagger. Like, what's hidden up your sleeve? What are you not telling me? This is great, but how did you get this? You know what I mean? Like, I remember when I was a kid, I'll never forget this. One time I was out for, it was Easter morning in church, and I was a preacher's kid, right? So Easter morning is a big deal in my family growing up. And we had a pancake dinner that we went out to with a bunch of people from church. And when it came time for the bill, I remember that I pulled money out of my pocket and offered to pay. And I remember feeling like that's the generous, right thing to do. But where did I get that money? I got it from the offering plate. So I had taken money out of the offering plate. And then I had thought to use it to try and buy some people pancakes. Really a ridiculous thing, right? And I'll never forget that I'll never forget how my dad treated me afterward. It was really wise. My dad, after that was done, brought me back to, first of all, he asked where I got the money. And I told them, and everyone at the table was kind of shocked and sort of laughing too. And then, I think I was probably like four or maybe a little bit older, 4 or 5. And my dad took me back to the church, and I remember it was completely empty. And he walked me to the offering plate, and he had me put the money in the offering plate, and he said, "That money is God's money. It's not ours. It's it does things like help the church stay clean. We pay the janitor with that money, or all the different things that it does, but it helps this church. It helps for God's home, basically." And I remember feeling entitled to that money because we lived in a parsonage, which was property of the church. The church built it, and the parsonage was across a cornfield, it was just across a field right next to a cornfield, right across a little field. So 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes to walk from my house to the front doors of the church. This was in southern Minnesota, and the point is that I remember feeling like, well, this is mine, right? This is like, it's just like, this is my house. Like, it didn't occur to me that it was God's money. So there was no like there was not a nefarious intent on my part, right? It wasn't like and then I tried to do something generous with it. So then I remember after this, my dad sitting me up on the altar, just sat me up there, and he said, "It was really nice of you to think to use God's money to do something nice for other people, like buy them pancakes." So he differentiated for me between the sort of mistake that I had made or taking something that wasn't mine, which I didn't really, he knew I didn't really understand what had happened, right? And then on the other hand, stealing or using something good for something bad, right? Getting the two, it was a complicated set of wires that had gotten crossed. That's the point I'm trying to make. There was good, there was bad. And it was just such a clear memory for me. So Mercury trine to Neptune, as this breakthrough is happening, I guess the warning is that we need to be careful that we're not trying to secretly or deceptively do something to make everything better or okay. That we are not trying to sabotage someone else, even if we're doing it with, the right intention. That we're not trying to, it's tempting when you're the good guy to want to cheat. Do you know what I mean? When you're the good girl, you're the good guy. You think I should be able to just take this little edge or do this little thing or tell this little lie or whatever because it's for the good. And of course, if someone knocks at your door and they say, is your son or daughter, your mom home or whatever, and they've got a gun, you lie. You say, no, they're not home. Nothing ethically wrong about that. But it's a little different when you try to, rob Peter to pay Paul, as they say, or when you try to take something morally dubious and use it in the service of something good. We have to be very aware of the potential for that kind of positive turnaround, right? There's a temptation that people face constantly in the world of finances. I'm not a financial guru. I'm not trying to pretend to be one, but I'll tell you that there is the philosophy nowadays that, for example, you should put everything on credit cards because you get points and then you get stuff, right? And then, you can pay it off later. Or even if you have the money, just use the credit cards because then, you'll get stuff. Another thing that's pretty common is if people have debt and they get a big windfall, which is rare, like, when do we get big windfalls? But so let's say someone dies, you get an inheritance. You inherit, maybe, some real money. And then you say to yourself, I'm going to invest it all right away. Even though I owe my friend, $5,000 because I had an emergency and he helped me, or even though I have 15 on a credit card or whatever, because I'm going to gamble that money and try to make a lot more, and I'll pay off the debt later. I'm not trying to pick on any particular kind of investment strategy. Again, I'm not trying to be self-righteous about anything. I'm just saying there is a belief in this world when it comes to money and when it comes to things that we have that we're really, we're always living from a place of debt. We're constantly living outside of our means, and we tend to gamble what we don't have, or we tend to, it's like the person in Vegas. You just got out of the hole. You just got your money back after, like losing a huge amount because you went crazy and spent too much. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm back to even. I might as well throw down a couple more grand and try to get up again. You know what I mean? Life is like that, though. We think that just because we're coming out of something that's difficult, or we think that just because, we're emerging from a difficult period, that we can, get a mortgage for the future right away. And we have to be really careful with Mercury trine to Neptune as Mars is coming into Scorpio and opposing Uranus. There's a breakthrough coming. There's a feeling of confronting something, turning a corner. And look, Venus and Jupiter are coming together into a conjunction in the sky. The feeling of something auspicious, big, grand, exciting, fortunate coming, right? But the trine to Neptune says, is it honest? Are you trying to turn something not so great into something, wonderful? And we have to be really careful of that. The wires, we have Jupiter. It's so interesting. Right as this is happening, right as all these transits are taking place, Jupiter is switching signs into Capricorn, entering its fall in the early part of December. That is one of the major symbols of moral corruption and of it is also a symbol where people will try to expand things and grow Jupiter through ways that are, again, just like morally not cool. That's because Jupiter's in its fall in Saturn's sign. Jupiter, the planet of morality, unity, cosmic truth and law, entering its fall in Saturn, it's going to start doing things in ways that aren't always good. Sometimes that means vigilante justice, for example. Not always, it's an archetype. It exists. Who am I to judge it? For example, Malcolm X had Jupiter in its fall in Capricorn. I'll be doing a couple of videos on Jupiter and Capricorn coming up, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot now, but my point is that this kind of Mercury stationing, turning direct, hitting the trine to Neptune, while Mars is punching in and gaining strength into Scorpio, hitting the opposition to rebellious, awakening Uranus, while Venus and Jupiter are coming together. It has the moment of it, like a feeling of like an auspicious breakthrough. So just don't blow it by, doing something that is trying to sneak away with more than you really need, or trying to use something that's deceptive or bad for some kind of gain, or like don't hire the mercenary right now within yourself or in the world. You know what I mean? Okay, so that's the big thing I wanted to talk about. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is the grand water trine, which is coming through tomorrow. The grand water trine is interesting because, it's being led by a very powerful moon in Cancer. So the potential for, when the lights get together, traditionally that's a sign of like, hey, let's make a baby. It's very, it's very like trine between the sun and the moon is like the getting together of the yin and the yang, which is very naturally procreative. So, just a very creative, and it's in fertile water sign. So very fertile weekend. And then when you hit when you're looking at the trine to Neptune, again, we have to be, again, similarly, always have to be careful with Neptune of the potential for there to be some level of deception or illusion coming in. But it is a very fertile period that, in a very just a general sense, should point to sort of abundance, or even the seed being planted of something that will become abundant in time. Now, the other thing about this grand water trine over the weekend is that Neptune with the sun and the moon can also point towards a sort of transcendental, almost sort of miraculous feeling, like something happening where it's kind of like, I've been praying for rain for my crops for weeks, and I was out on my porch finally giving up and saying, I guess you've left us, God. And right at the moment I finished my sentence, the thunder, split the sky. It can be a moment where, there's some deep emotional release where something's been pent up, and the feeling of kind of the miraculous, the transcendental, the otherworldly, and the miraculous, a sense of faith being restored. This is an emotional weekend as well, with a lot of water energy there. But it could also be a very sensitive weekend, where we have to look at, where we feel we belong and where we feel we're left out. Family issues, family rifts, family divisions, because of the moon's oppositions to Saturn and Pluto, which happen, throughout the whole weekend. The square to Mars on Sunday, more volatile emotional energy and potential for there to be more sort of passive, aggressive, manipulative dynamics with family members, especially, or in clans or tightly knit groups, ethnic, cultural, etc., racial. These kinds of tensions could be really strong on Sunday. It's, for example, if you are a if you could easily get caught as the mediator in something, or find yourself having a conflict with someone who's getting in the middle of something somehow. Those are possibilities. You also have the potential for an exploration of like family moon, and things that are, things that need to be confronted in the family, Mars, but Mars and Venus's sign. The conflicts that we have around beauty, material values, wealth, even things like pleasure, substances, stuff like that. Because Mars and Venus, sometimes Mars and Venus's sign can just mean that there are conflicts, Mars, around what are supposed to be pleasurable things. That's why if you saw my Mars in profile video, like a lot of the people in those videos had drug problems, because there is sometimes just conflict around how one is supposed to experience pleasure. So toss that into the mix of family time. And on Sunday, that could be really interesting. So, it's an interesting church day if you go to church. But at any rate, so that's a bit about the grand water trine over the weekend. Now, the other thing that's happening is Venus is just separating from a square to Neptune. This is kind of romantic. It's glamorous. It's beautiful. It's like, okay, just you give it an idea. Venus square to Neptune. My family we have a friend who's a photographer. She took some photos for us down by a little creek for Christmas. So holiday photos that we send out to like all of our family or whatever, right? So Venus was square Neptune, and we took family photos next to a creek, right? So you pair the Venus with the Neptune transit, Venus and Neptune together in a transit, and you get, romance, beauty, art, sensuality, etc. If you remember my monthly overview video, I said, it's around that time of the month that you might find your spaceship coupe. I was talking about Justin Timberlake. So, over the past couple of days, Venus's square to Neptune has also, just like, for example, one of the things that it has resulted in is also, like, in the media. If you pay attention to the media at all, you'll know that the famous football quarterback Colin Kaepernick, right, has been asked to do a secret workout, basically, or a last minute workout to see if some NFL teams might be interested in him. And it was done very secretively, very last minute. People are questioning whether this is real or it's a publicity stunt. It feeds into everything we just talked about, right? The debilitated athlete, Mars, about to experience a breakthrough. Mercury is about to turn direct after being frustrated and retrograde for a long time. This is a picture of But then we wonder, is it a PR stunt? Are they really giving him a chance, or do they? He's the guy who kneeled for the anthems, in case you don't know who he is. So he was a figure who stood up for, racial injustice, and basically got sort of blackballed by the NFL. So we're wondering, is this his big moment? Is this a breakthrough, or is there something deceptive going on? Or is there some self-interested purpose that the NFL has in doing this? That's what you get when you have a lot of Neptune in the air. A big like the NFL is an entertainment complex, and it strikes into this. Let's revisit something from a couple of years ago, and give this workout to this guy who was like a real, sort of a rebellious figure according to the NFL owners, right? And of course he's a hero for many people. So you can't always tell what's true, what's real, and what's not when you've got Venus square Neptune plus the Mercury trine Neptune, etc. Now, I want to say something a little bit more uplifting about Venus square Neptune, just into today into tomorrow, which is that you may also just notice that, your interest in art, music, theater, romance, beauty, just Venusian things, and even adding in the spiritual dimension of Neptune may be peaking. So don't be surprised if there's just more of that. If you have a spiritual life that is not beautiful, it's not a spiritual life. If your spiritual life doesn't include the need for sensual, beautiful experience, then we're not in touch with divinity, because divinity is beautiful. That's where beauty comes from, right? So the other call right now may also be about beautifying. How do I spiritualize the beauty, or how do I make beauty more spiritual? Meaning, maybe I like things in the world. I like food. I like colors. I like art. I like music. I like touch, or whatever. So all the sensual pleasures. How do I dovetail them into a life of spiritual devotion? That could be a really relevant question right now. Also, be careful of just the allure and the glamour of Venus and Neptune. Okay, so that's just today and tomorrow. I think that's probably just about it. I think, am I missing anything? Watch for Mars culminating. Let's see. Culmination of Mars on Sunday. Yeah, it's real intense with a square to Mars. That's going to be, Mars can be that Sunday might be a little bit tough. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. There it is. Yeah. But the good news is, again, right after Mars culminates, by early next week, you've got Mercury turning direct, and then Mars picking up great dignity, moving into Scorpio, and then hitting the opposition to Uranus by the 26th. Or is it the 24th? Yes, the 24th. So make sure I haven't forgotten anything. No, I think that's it. You've got the Venus-Jupiter conjunction coming up. I'm going to be doing a separate talk about that. For those of you who don't know this, I should say this. Couple of announcements, I guess. One is that I was just on a show called The Basement Astrologer with my friend Kip, and he's having different astrologers come in and talk about all of the different presidential candidates, Democrats and Republicans. I spoke with him today about Donald Trump's chart. It's the first time I've ever spoken publicly about it. I really don't like to get involved in politics. And I respect the fact that I have people from both sides of the aisle who watch my program. So I try to stay neutral. That people know that I'm more liberal in my leanings, but I try to keep this about the spiritual path. But if people are interested in that, I'll probably post a link to that on my website, nightlightastrology.com, in the next, I guess, few days or week or something like that. The second announcement is that tomorrow, my Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic course starts. You're not too late. You can still get in tonight if you want, or tomorrow morning. We start at noon Eastern tomorrow. Every class is recorded, and there's 30 classes on the year, plus 12 guest speakers, tons of optional homework, bonus material, forum discussions. You want to learn ancient astrology. Classical astrology is amazing. So I can't recommend it more highly. You can check that out at nightlightastrology.com on the certification course tab, or email me if you have questions at nightlightastrology@gmail.com. And then last but not least, next week I am beginning my annual Kickstarter campaign. The last 40 days of every calendar year for going on 6 years now, I have raised money from the people who read my work or who now watch my work, and have last year we raised the support of 419 backers, and I'll be trying to beat that record this year by gaining the donations of 420 of my viewers, readers, subscribers. This is a big part of how I support my family. I'm an astrologer full time. This is what I do every day. I produce free content year round. 250 to over 300 days of the year, I produce content free for everyone. And then at the last 40 days of the year, I just try to raise money to support this work, which occupies a big amount of my everyday activity as an astrologer. There's a ton of rewards that come along with that. There is greatly discounted tuition for all of my programs in 2020. There are greatly discounted readings. There are lots of other things too. Lots of cool gifts that I give in return for your donation. So watch for that. The Kickstarter will be launching like next week, and I don't know the exact day, but it's next week. So I'll be banging the drum for the last 40 days of the year, thanking all of you and asking you to support me for another year of this work. All right, that's what I've got. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll be back around pretty soon to start in on a series on Jupiter moving into Capricorn. And then we'll be visiting the eclipses coming up, and then the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Those are big series that I'll be doing down the line. Sometime in there, I'll probably try to do a second video on Saturn returns in general, because I've been meaning to follow up on that. But yeah, anything else you want to see, you can always email me with questions. Okay, take care, everyone.